quickedit.net.
Cruise ships. They promise luxury, adventure, and unforgettable memories. But for some passengers, the voyage ends in mystery and silence. Today we're diving into chilling cases where people boarded cruise ships and vanished without a trace. I'm Connor from Quick Edit, and here are 3 strange cruise ship disappearances the cruise companies don't want you to know about. It was just after sunrise on March 22, 2011. The Disney Wonder, a massive cruise ship owned by the happiest company on Earth, was sailing off the Pacific coast of Mexico. On board, hundreds of smiling passengers, dozens of families, and one young woman who would vanish into thin air. Her name was Rebecca Corium, and what happened to her remains one of the most chilling mysteries at sea. Rebecca was just 24 years old, British, bright, athletic, and compassionate. She had grown up in Chester, England, with dreams of working with children and traveling the world. So in 2010, when she landed a job as a youth activity coordinator aboard Disney's cruise line, it seemed like a dream come true. Rebecca was assigned to the Disney Wonder, which operated along the California to Mexico route. It was hard work, long hours, confined quarters, but she was doing what she loved. That is, until something changed. March 21st. The ship had just left the port of Los Angeles, bound for Puerto Vallarta. That evening, Rebecca logged into Facebook to message her parents. It was short but strange. She said she'd call them tomorrow, and that she was having a bit of a rough time. That would be the last anyone ever heard from her. At around 5:45 a.m., ship security cameras captured Rebecca in the crew area. She's on the phone, pacing, looking visibly distressed. A male crew member approaches her. She thanks him, brushes back her hair, and walks off. She was never seen again. When Rebecca failed to report for work later that day, the ship's staff searched her cabin. She was gone, and so were her belongings. Disney contacted her parents, Mike and Anne Corium, back in the UK, and flew them to meet the ship when it docked in Los Angeles. What they found shocked them. Rebecca's flip-flops had been found near the edge of Deck 5, the crew pool area. Disney's private investigator suggested she'd likely been washed overboard by a rogue wave. But here's the thing. The crew pool on Deck 5 is enclosed by high walls, and isn't near the open sea. There were no witnesses, no alerts, no security alarms triggered. And strangest of all, the flip-flops? They weren't hers. The Bahamian authorities, technically responsible since the ship is registered in the Bahamas, sent one investigator, who spent a single day on board. No formal forensic investigation, no public report, no crime scene photos released. And Disney? They've remained tight-lipped ever since. There have been reports, unconfirmed, of a female voice screaming in the early hours. One crew member later told the press that Disney instructed staff not to talk. Others claim Rebecca may have discovered or been involved in something that put her in danger. So what happened to Rebecca Corium? Maybe she fell, though the general lack of evidence contradict that. Suicide maybe? There were emotional signs, but her family insists she gave no indication of suicidal intent. Was it foul play? Rebecca's case has become one of the most high-profile cruise ship disappearances of all time, not because of what we know, but because of what we don't. Someone aboard that ship might have known more than what they claimed, but with no CCTV footage released, and no official investigation, it's impossible to know. When a woman vanishes at sea, most people expect a ship-wide search, a flurry of reports, and a grieving family notified immediately. But what if that never happens? What if the cruise line quietly disposes of evidence, fires the whistleblowers, and tells no one for weeks, not even her own daughter? This is the haunting case of Marion Carver, a woman who boarded a luxury cruise and was never seen again. And what followed may be even more disturbing than her disappearance. Marion Carver was 40 years old, a former investment banker from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Intelligent, independent, and private. She told no one, not even her family, that she was going on a vacation. On August 27th, she boarded the Celebrity Mercury, a cruise ship bound for Alaska. She purchased a stateroom for one. Quiet, discreet, Marion didn't stand out. But 5 days later, when the ship returned to port, she was gone. What followed should shock anyone who's ever stepped foot on a cruise ship. Marian's disappearance wasn't reported by Celebrity Cruises. Not to the Coast Guard, not to the FBI, not to the local police, not even to her family. Her stateroom attendant noticed she never used her bed after the first night. Her meals weren't touched. He reported it to his supervisor. The supervisor told him to keep quiet and ordered that all of Marian's belongings be removed from the cabin. For 5 weeks, no one outside the ship was told Marian Carver was missing. Her father, Kendall Carver, hadn't spoken to Marian in weeks. He began calling. No answer. Eventually, he reported her missing to Cambridge police. Only then did they discover she'd boarded the Celebrity Mercury, but Celebrity Cruises gave them nothing. Kendall began an investigation of his own. He hired private detectives, interviewed crew members, filed lawsuits, and uncovered a systemic cover-up by the cruise line. It wasn't just neglect, he later said. It was intentional. They didn't want the bad press. They wanted it buried. Kendall's investigation unearthed internal memos. They revealed that the cruise line knew Marian was missing, that her belongings had been collected and stored, and destroyed weeks later. The steward who reported her absence, he was fired. Security footage from the ship, gone. There had been no shipwide search, no overboard alerts, no effort to locate her at sea. Celebrity Cruises, owned by Royal Caribbean, fought to keep details sealed. They insisted Marian must have left the ship or jumped. No evidence was ever found to support either. Marian may have gone to the deck late at night and accidentally fallen overboard due to wind, slippery surfaces, or misjudging the railing height. She boarded alone without telling her family, so Marian may have taken her own life, jumping overboard during a personal mental health crisis. She had reportedly been struggling with depression following the loss of custody of her daughter. There is also the slight possibility that Marian staged her disappearance to start over, go off the grid, or escape personal issues, although her bank statements and identity were never used again. Marian Carver went on a cruise alone, seeking solitude or perhaps peace. Instead, she became a ghost. A warning, and a movement, to demand answers for the families of the disappeared. For one British man, a relaxing holiday turned into a haunting mystery, and nearly 15 years later, no one knows how, or why, he disappeared. This is the case of John Halford, a husband, a father, a man who vanished during the final night of a Mediterranean cruise, just hours before he was due to come home. John Halford was 63 years old, a former head teacher from Britain, enjoying his retirement. In July of 2011, he was set off alone on a 12-day Mediterranean cruise aboard the Thompson Spirit. His wife, Ruth, stayed home in Britain. It wasn't unusual. John loved to travel. He planned to return to her in just a few days. The ship made its way through the beautiful ports of Egypt, Greece, and Turkey. John sent postcards. He called his wife. He sounded happy, healthy, looking forward to coming home. But something went terribly wrong. On the night of July 9th, the Thompson Spirit was sailing from Egypt to the UK. It was the final night of the cruise. John had dinner, spoke with other passengers, and reportedly returned to his cabin around midnight. When the ship docked in the UK the next morning, John was nowhere to be found. His belongings were still in the cabin: wallet, passport, suitcase, all untouched. But John Halford was missing. Cruise staff claimed he must have gone overboard sometime during the night, but no one had seen it happen. There were no witnesses, no alarms, no man overboard protocols triggered. The ship had traveled hundreds of miles overnight, and the possibility of searching the sea was already long gone. Back home, his wife Ruth was devastated. She had spoken to him just the day before. He was excited to return. He told her to meet him at the port with a hug and a sandwich. Instead, she received a phone call. John was gone. Authorities offered no answers. The case wasn't treated as a crime. There was no formal investigation, no forensic examination of his cabin, no interviews with passengers. The cruise line, Thompson, simply called it a man overboard incident and moved on. But what really happened to John Halford? The simplest theory is that John fell, maybe while walking on deck in the dark. But the railings are high, the sea was calm, and there were no reports of alcohol or strange behavior. Others ask, could someone have pushed him? Was there an altercation no one reported? If so, the cruise line didn't investigate. They didn't preserve CCTV. They didn't even notify all passengers that someone had gone missing. Most cruise ships are registered under so-called flags of convenience, like the Bahamas or Panama. These nations have lax regulations and little incentive to investigate missing persons, especially if no foul play is immediately apparent. John Halford boarded the Thompson Spirit, looking forward to another journey and to seeing his wife again. Instead, he vanished. Quietly, invisibly, without warning.